Welcome back to Silverstone for the next episode of Motorsport Uncut. Now, this is recorded on the same day as our previous episode here in the Type R Trophy. By far my busiest day of the season, doing a qualifying session and 2 races in the Type R Trophy, and then a qualifying session and a 45-minute shared drive with Christian in Roadsports, all on the same day. Luckily the timetable was quite kind to us, no back-to-back sessions, but it was quite close. Regardless, I'll hand back to myself on the day to introduce what I was expecting to be a pretty exciting one at Silverstone International. Good morning and welcome back to Silverstone again. So you'd have seen recently I did the Type R Trophy event, and that's actually on the same day as this, so I'm doing a double header. So Type R Trophy was the first session I was out in, but the second one is going to be Roadsports. So looking forward to this because I've done the race with Christian a month or 2 back, and it didn't go especially well for both of us. We just didn't feel especially comfortable, so I think there's going to have been a lot of learning since that time. Christian's obviously done some adaptations to the car, and also I think I feel a little bit more confident going into this one. Silverstone is a flatter track, so I think naturally, hopefully that helps the whole scenario. I think the big worry for me was sort of turn 1 at Brands Hatch. I was just worried. I don't know for whatever reason, it was just mental block. But regardless, I've got to go and do the qualifying session for that soon, and there'll be a 45-minute race later on. So you'll see some familiar names in that, including Sam McKee. He's racing in Class C as well, and I think he'll probably be a bit ahead of us. Sam's a very quick driver, and he knows his car pretty well, so he'll probably be at least a decent amount ahead of us. We're in Class C still, but yeah, hopefully we're racing someone within Class C, maybe a fast Class D runner, we'll see. But regardless, it's a super busy day, so I'm looking forward to getting this one properly started here. So we're going to go out. I'm just going to do 1 flying lap just to give Christian the maximum amount of time possible in the car, and yeah, let's go. Looking forward to it. So qualifying was first up for us at Silverstone. Now I've got to say, going to this one, I hadn't really had much experience in the car, so that was definitely in the back of my mind. But the agreement I had with Christian was, as I'd already done the qualifying session for the Type R Trophy, I would only do my minimum required laps out there, so he could practice this track for the first time ever for the majority of the session. So he went out there after I'd done my mandatory laps, and he'd set our best lap of the session. This ended up being a 1 minute 22.5, which I think was just over a second slower than what I'd done in the Type R Trophy. So even though Christian's car is definitely down on power in comparison to mine, he's doing pretty well in there, and that lap time I think was pretty representative of where our pace was. We weren't actually last in class this time, we were still in Class C, but there was about 5 cars behind us in class, some of which didn't actually get in a representative lap time, but regardless, it's nice to not be right at the back in class. In fact, there was a car significantly slower than us, but I think it did have some issues and only had done a couple of laps. But we were quite excited going into this one. The pace looked a bit better than it had done at Brands Hatch, where neither of us felt particularly comfortable within the car. Both of us excited going to this one, a new adventure, pretty much sitting mid-pack in our class. But saying that, there was a big gap to our class pole, which was, look it up, nearly 3 seconds up the road. So that's qualifying done for the Roadsports series. So because Christian hasn't driven this track at all, or at least recently, he wanted to obviously have the majority of the session because I've got the Type R Trophy to learn a little bit of the circuit. So still going into it obviously with very little knowledge, only having driven like 5 or 6 proper laps around it in the Type R Trophy qualifying session. So yeah, I did the 1 out lap, 1 hot lap, 1 in lap basically, and I think Christian's time put us 7th or 8th in class, which isn't too bad at all. It's quite respectable. I think we could be happy with that. I think we've got like 4 or 5 cars behind us in class, which is better than Brands Hatch where we were really struggling. But yeah, hopefully I'm just sort of comfortable in the car. I'm going to be taking the second part of the race. Christian's going to be doing the majority, and I guess we'll just see how it goes, and fingers crossed to have some good racing out there. So yeah, I've got to get ready for the Type R Trophy first race, which is coming up soon. I'm sorry, there's loads of overlap in these videos, I'm sure, but regardless, well done to Christian in qualifying. That was a nice result there, and hopefully in the race you can put another sort of a good drive like that, and hopefully I can just lap semi decently and bring it home. And then after that, there's a mad rush to get my Type R Trophy second race in. So let's go. Looking forward to the first race and only race here in Roadsports. It's a 45 minutes endurance race, and Christian hopefully will be starting, unless plans have changed since I last spoke to him. In between the qualifying session and my first race in the Roadsports series, I had done my first Type R Trophy race round this track, some of which was under the safety car. I'd done a couple of overtakes in that one as well, so I was a little bit more confident with the track, but we were all looking at the weather radar. It had been all over the place throughout the day, and kind of as predicted, there was rain towards the end of this race. Predicted, and you'll see what happens. That well and truly did come down on us. But regardless, the start of the race was dry for Christian. I think he was happy about that, considering he'd done all of his laps in qualifying essentially in the dry, even though the track was a little bit greasy. But Christian would start the race for us in Roadsports Class C. We were hoping to come home with a solid result, not looking for a podium really, or even a top 5. But we can just bring home the car, not last in class, and with a representative lap time, I think we'd all be quite happy with that. And like always with these things, it came around a lot quicker than we expected. Before we knew it, Christian was out there on his formation lap about to start this race. So I think he was a little bit more confident going to this one in comparison to Brands. There was a little bit of a judder on the brakes going through the race, which was obviously something we were having to overcome, and both of us being quite new to the whole world of racing in terms of being the driver, these little things obviously can add up and ensure that you don't really get 100% out of the car, because even though it might be a noise and it might actually be doing much to the car, psychologically always it does take away a little bit. But regardless, Christian here is making sure he's right up behind the cars in front here to try and get a good start here, as they're all bunching up, and unfortunately their layout of these final couple of corners at Silverstone mean that if you slightly miss that jump, you can lose a lot of time. So through the final corner and up to start the race here, and Christian's done a good job here to keep the cars behind. The BMW had already overtaken quite clearly before the line in front, which I think was starting alongside Christian, and into turn 1 a little bit of understeer, or not quite enough temperature in those front tyres meant that slightly wide, but I'd done exactly the same thing in my qualifying session in Type R Trophy, and likewise in that same corner as well. Just it's weird when the tyres aren't up to temperature in that corner there, the car just behaves quite strangely. But you can see lots of cars battling in front here. Christian has kept himself honest in his first lap of the race, and while we did expect a couple of the cars behind us to come past, especially with the inevitable straight line advantage that they would have, Christian's putting in a solid first lap here at Silverstone. And I think, to be perfectly honest, saying myself as a rookie, I mean, I realise I have done more races than Christian, but the first lap is one of the toughest things I think for me, is just getting into the zone straight away when you're really new to racing, because it just takes so much mental energy to make sure you're trusting the car in the opening stages. But a good first lap there from Christian kept us out of trouble, and we look forward to the rest of the race at this point. And as the first few laps went on, Christian started putting in some really solid lap times within class and started to draw us closer to the cars in front. That battle you saw in front from the very start, cars going side by side. And Christian's done a good job here, as you can see directly in front of us here as we go onto the starting gantry. We've got a BMW, the one that was around the outside of us before the start of the race. Now Christian's turned in a lot better through there, the BMW possibly missing its braking point and going a tad wide. And Christian's got the speed through the corner to look down the inside into the next one, but the BMW significantly later on the brakes. And this is exactly what I guess I've been missing in my first season of racing, is this sort of battle every single race. I think possibly I couldn't deal with that mentally every single race, to have something like a wheel-to-wheel fight. I know it's obviously been the case where I've been the only person in class quite a few times, but I have had some good battles, but obviously more would have been appreciated to learn certain things quicker. And I think in those moments there, as a novice driver, you really just pick up so much about how your car behaves in certain situations, and how, if that same situation would happen again, what you would do. Now BMW is now a few seconds in front, and a MX-5 has dived down the inside of us here, and I think that slightly put Christian offline, and that meant another, I think that's an MR2 coming past us now as well, with a big old spoiler. Now I think both of these cars are in Class C. Possibly can be corrected on that here, but it all looks pretty equal regardless. Obviously you have some people in the lower classes doing exceedingly well and being up and amongst the cars in front, and likewise the bottom end of Class B, you'll see that the front Class C guys battling with them. So I think that's the good thing about Roadsports, is that you pretty much always have someone to battle with. There's such a big grid for every single event, and that makes the races typically exciting. And I guess there are a number of series like this now. You know, we were looking to do the Track Day Trophy later this year, as well as a few other ones. I think the BRSCC Club Sport Trophy is another one with a very similar style of event. But regardless, I think we were quite happy with the first lap or two. But you can see here one little mistake, or like it's not really a mistake, one little move from an MX-5 getting down the inside into this corner here a lap ago meant that Christian was slightly offline, and then a few cars got past him, but back past the Fiesta. And I guess the aim here for Christian is trying to get past the BMW. It looks like the MX-5 and the MR2 here were a little bit quicker than us. I can see that MR2's now got past the BMW. I think qualifying, us and the BMW were very, very close. I say us, Christian of course was the one that set the fastest lap. But regardless, it looked to be a great battle between us and this BMW in front. Of course, very different cars out on track. The strengths and weaknesses really show around here. But I think this is a good track actually for the mix. I mean, you've got certain parts of this track, it's sort of like a square in a lot of ways. There are those sort of 4 main braking points, and it really helps out the car like ours, the Honda, which doesn't have so much power, whereas some of these BMWs are significantly faster in a straight line. But you can see already starting to get lapped. We're not that far into this race, but the guys in Class A are just insanely quick. I mean, there are TCR cars and cars of that speed in that top class, which is kind of mad. But regardless, it was something you needed to look out for quite early on. The fast guys, I think that's Nick in his Audi. The fast guys in Class A, they catch up pretty quickly as Christian puts a lap himself on one of the BMWs in Class D. All of this battling here is where in class you can gain position if you just get a little bit of a better run out of the corners than the cars in front whilst cars are lapping you. It can be a fantastic opportunity to get that position that you've been battling for minutes and minutes. You can see once again Christian this time looking to the outside. Is this one going to work out? The BMW will probably try and outbrake. Once again, a little bit of a sideways moment there for Christian, possibly eyes looking at the car in front. I've done that many a time and made little mistakes myself. But this battle here between us and the BMW is really starting to warm up, looking like it's going to be an exciting one for the rest of this race. Now, once again, we're right on the back of him, and at this point you can see we're definitely quicker through turn 1 here, much more committed, or possibly just where the Honda comes into its own through this first part of the lap. But as you can see, once again, braking to the outside. The BMW is braking later on the inside, but that tight inside line is not particularly working out for him on the exit. But saying that, he's got a bit more power to push away out of the corner. Now we're getting lapped here by a Lotus Elise or Exige. I wish I knew the difference. I think it's an Exige actually. And down this back straight, Christian's actually really benefiting from the slipstream. Of course, our car is not the fastest in a straight line. It's got under 200 horsepower, this Honda Civic, whereas mine has about 210. So that is obviously, it's not a massive difference, but that will cost you over a lap. Not just in the straight lines, but exiting out of the corners as well, of course. So you can see here, Christian pulling to the right hand side as there is a safety car out on track. The yellow flags are out. Now, this was a lot earlier than we had expected. The plan was for Christian to come in about 26-27 minutes into the race to hand over to me, giving Christian the maximum amount of time in the car, because of course we expected him to be a lot quicker. So unfortunately we weren't quite ready as a team. I saw the safety boards come out and put my helmet on and was just about ready in time as Christian pulls into the pit lane here, but some of the rest of the crew can see we're having to run over from the pit wall because they didn't see Christian coming in to the pits. It was just one of those things. It was an instinctive call from Christian to come to the pits when the safety car had just come out, and not everyone was quite ready in time, but I think luckily by the time that we were in the pits, enough of the guys had got from the pit wall to the car, meaning that we were not too hampered in here. But a big problem that we have been having is that Christian is significantly smaller than me, mostly in the belly area, so I need to lose a bit of weight going to next season for sure. But that means quite a few things. Obviously seat position has to be compromised for both of us, also the length of the steering wheel. So Christian's been using a seat insert, and that's kind of been helping us here. I think we both felt kind of comfortable, but obviously it could be improved, but it's one of those things. We're all learning in this situation here. So you can see here we're just getting the car started and we're waiting for our time to go. I'm not 100% sure what's going on here, who I'm looking at and who I'm looking for, but there's absolute chaos in the pit lane here. People are sort of diving in all around us here, and then we're sort of blocked on the exit, so I have to be quite brave here. You can't really see what's going on around you, so you obviously have to trust your guys, and exactly what happened there. So that was good. Everyone, I think, worked quite well in the pit stop there. It obviously wasn't perfect, but that was because obviously it was a last minute decision from Christian to come into the pits, and if we'd have something like a radio, then maybe that would have helped, I don't know. But for me, it's possibly good. I'm getting out here, getting a more laps in than I would have expected, and we're coming out under a safety car, which means possibly for me it's good because I can get used to the car again. And in this situation I am quite uncomfortable, I guess I'd say, because I haven't really had too many laps in this car, so still learning a lot. So the tough thing here was obviously we're under a safety car condition and I need to try and catch up to the group in front, but at the same time I don't want to obviously spin off the track under the safety car. So here we are, pretty much in the same position that we were at the start of the safety car period, behind this BMW, the blue BMW, and that was really my aim, was to try and keep up with him as best as possible. But as we go out and to start the racing again, the green flags are out. I did notice a couple of little things that weren't quite what I'd expected possibly as I went out there. Christian had mentioned the brake judder, and I think that was something that was psychologically I'm having to get used to that. But I think the biggest thing actually weirdly was that the steering wheel is one that's detachable, and unfortunately it didn't quite go back on straight, so it was sort of, it wasn't massive, but the steering wheel wasn't straight going in a straight line, which obviously isn't ideal, but it's one of those little things that you learn. And I know that sounds silly, but in the moment it's easy not, to get it a few degrees off here. So you can see it's pushing down to the right hand side a little bit here, or that's what I'm having to do to keep it straight. So I'm quite happy that I noticed that relatively quickly, but regardless I wasn't 100% comfortable in the car, but I think that's fully to be expected with so little track time in it. So I'm looking at the inside of this yellow BMW, isn't it? And I'm going down the inside here to put a lap on the Class D car. A little bit of a snap in the middle of the corner, as I'm quite clearly not quite at home with the car yet, not quite feeling fully comfortable, which is fine. Obviously it is a very different car to mine, even though it is from the outside a Honda Civic Type R. It's got little quirks which mine doesn't, and mine has little quirks that this car doesn't, so it's one of those things. I was still having fun out there, and that was the main thing, the main part, point of the day, and to go racing is to enjoy it, and thankfully that was the case. So a few laps later, and the worry that we all had going into this race, the rain to start coming down, happened in my part of the stint, with about a third of the race to go. Now, it wasn't a really light drizzle, it was heavy enough to warrant the windscreen wipers. So you can see there, I flick the switch on the middle of the dashboard there, which is slightly different to my car. On my car there, by the steering wheel, on the sort of toggles, where you indicate with, so that's where my button's normally placed. It's obviously not a massive difference, but it's one of those things that in the heat of the moment you're like, oh god, where are the lights, where are the wipers? And it's all mostly there, but sometimes it just takes your brain a second to figure that out. So you can see a couple of laps in and the rain is well and truly coming down now. I was a little bit gutted because I was looking at the race logic that you can see in the middle of the dash, and I was quite happy with how it was all going. Not so much this. I got dive bombed a little bit by that Seat, and of course I'm not really in a situation to just turn into him there, because I think that would have been a bit of chaos, unfortunately. So I'm happy that I didn't do that. Happy that I gave him some space, but that obviously lost a little bit of time. I think the rain as well, just, it was all coming together, and he was trying to defend from the Lotus at the same point. And you can see there a snap once again through the last part of the lap, and I can say it was really starting to feel weird out there. The car just, the sort of temperature was dropping, the rain was obviously on the track, and the car itself wasn't feeling weird. It's just how I was reacting to the conditions. And typically it wasn't too bad. I think luckily it was only really impacting one point of the track, which I know sounds stupid, but if it was the whole lap, maybe my brain wouldn't have been able to comprehend it. But I felt that every single lap going to this part of the track here, this is where it got wet. It was weird because the rest of the track was mostly dry, and just going to there, the last sequence, we were certainly losing time with the rain. But in terms of the race logic, I was looking at that. My best lap was a second slower than Christian's in this race, which I wasn't too disappointed with. I think a little bit of that, I'm not sure how much of it was because I wasn't getting a slipstream on my fastest laps. I wasn't getting that toe down the back straight, or maybe it was just that the headwind was really compromising me, but I was just looking at it in a straight line and I was hammering time. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I can't control that really. I can't control the wind, and I can't really control who I have in front of me to slipstream. So you can see here I'm fiddling around with the wipers just too much here. It's distracting me too much. I was trying to get them to go down on the left hand side of the screen to make sure they're out of vision, but I just couldn't get them to go like that. So I just decided, okay, just leave them on, Alex, just leave them on. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 laps of this race, there was significant rain and my pace was severely backed off just to try and bring it home to the finish here, because I had no idea how many cars might be affected by the rain, spin off, come into the pits or whatever. So I was thinking at this point, just take it easy. And I saw my pit board for the whole part of my session, I just stayed in the same position, possibly I think gained 1 through someone retiring, but regardless, you can see there my hand, it was getting a little bit tense. You can see the way I'm holding the wheel is quite aggressive onto the steering wheel, which possibly gave me a bit of cramp in there. But regardless, I knew that we were coming to the last part of this race here and actually going up to the last corner now. I wasn't particularly thrilled with the way I'd driven this stint of the race, but overall I was happier, much happier than I was at Brands Hatch, getting my lap down much closer to Christian, and just in general I think driving a bit better. There were a few little moments there, obviously getting lapped and having to jump out the way. That wasn't ideal, but it's just one of those things in multi-class racing that you've just got to encounter. So it's a weird one. The way that the pit stops all played out meant we actually ended up losing quite a few positions. It's a bit of an odd one. So I think I said we had 5 cars behind us in class after qualifying, and in the race we had 3 cars behind us in class. So a few of those guys getting past. Actually, to be fair, a couple of the ones that qualified behind us were actually really quick Class C cars, but they just hadn't got the lap time in. But yeah, it is what it is. We still managed to finish ahead of some good drivers. Actually, Sam McKee, he was sharing with the new driver Dan in that race as well, and we qualified behind him but finished ahead of him. So I think we gained a bit out of the pit stops in comparison to them, but we actually lost something in the pit stops to quite a few of the other people. So swings and roundabouts, it is what it is. I think overall we both enjoyed the race. The mixed conditions were fun. But in general, I guess we both would obviously like to see a bit more performance out of both of our driving, just to try and go for it and capitalise on the opportunities that we had here. I think there was a bit of a better result possible out there for us today, and I'm not saying it was nothing to do with Christian, it was all down to my driving at the end there. I had lost about 10 seconds to the BMW that were battling throughout, so that's a bit gutting. I saw at some laps I was catching him up, and I think maybe just being, as I always am, a little bit too nice in the traffic, getting out of people's way too easily sometimes. That cost me a bit of time. It'd been nice to try and keep up with him. Our fastest lap was better than his at the end of the day, which is something, I guess, but not significantly. It was a nice little battle that Kim and Christian had at the start of this race, and for me I was just happy with my stint and how it went. It wasn't fantastic by any means, but I think I can say a vast improvement over Brands Hatch last time out in this series. And as you probably know, what happens in my second Type R trophy race, there wasn't any debrief to camera after this one. I jumped straight from this race here, soaking wet, over to my car, where by the time in the start of our race session, the track was dry because of the sessions in between drying out the track. But regardless, because of the incident that happened in my Type R trophy race, I never did any piecing to camera after that race, or indeed this one. I just didn't have the time and mental capacity to do so. But overall, I can't lie, it was actually a really fun day. I know that's a bit of an odd thing to say considering we had the incident there, but I learned some tough but also important lessons about motorsport in this day, in both my races in the Type R Trophy and then our shared drive here in Roadsports. Some important stuff, and actually my first proper wet driving. I guess you wouldn't even call that proper wet, but it was getting there, and that was important as well. My first experience really in the rain, full stop in racing, especially in a Honda Civic. I'd had a little bit in the BMW and the Saxo as well, but probably nothing to quite that level. So it's important to get that ticked off as well. Really important for my career, in quotes, in motorsport, just to get every little experience in as possible. And I think I didn't do too badly in the wet conditions. Of course I was a bit cautious, but not crazily so. So that's it for another episode of Motorsport Uncut. Obviously I can only apologise for not having so much piece to camera stuff for this one because of the incident and also just how busy the day was. I just didn't get all of the general footage I would have liked over the day, but it was a busy one and I guess I probably expected that. So we'll see you soon for another one. The next race was in the Ford KA at Snetterton. So you might be thinking, that's pretty boring, you're going to be driving around by yourself. And whilst you're half right there, it was actually an exciting race and an exciting video to put together. So you'll see that one soon. Thank you for tuning into this one as always. Massive thanks to Christian and his team for all of their efforts. And I think we made the car significantly better in comparison to the Brands Hatch round. I think that filled us a bit of confidence and I think generally we did a good job. So we'll see you soon for another one. Thank you for tuning in and we'll speak soon. Goodbye.